It's July 1518. You live in Strasbourg, a free imperial city of the Holy Roman Empire. Before dawn, you hear shoes scraping against the stones outside. Not a wedding, not a feast. A woman is moving in the street below. The records do not preserve her name. At first, you wait for her to stop. She does not. Then, it is no longer one woman. Families begin whispering about children, wives, neighbors, people caught in the same relentless movement. By late July, a city chronicle will speak of about 50 people dancing day and night. 5 centuries later, people will call this the dancing plague of 1518. But you do not have a name for it yet. You only know that something has changed in your street. Strasbourg is not a peaceful place waiting to be disturbed. The summer is hot, food is expensive. Bad harvests, sickness, debt, and fear have already made ordinary life feel precarious. You know what it means to count coins before buying bread. You know what it means to hear church bells and wonder who has died. And now, when you look through your shutters, people are moving as if their own bodies have turned against them. They are not dancing for applause. They are not dancing because a musician has called them into the square. They look trapped inside the motion. And that changes the rules of ordinary life. You begin measuring every sound. A cartwheel rattling over stone makes you turn. Someone tapping a spoon against a bowl makes you pause. A child skipping in a doorway feels suddenly dangerous, not because the child has done anything wrong, but because you no longer trust where harmless movement ends. You still have bread to buy, water to carry, work to finish. The city does not stop being a city just because it is afraid. At the market, a fishmonger calls out prices. A baker sweeps flour from a threshold. A porter shoulders a sack and keeps his eyes on the ground. Everyone is trying to perform normal life carefully enough that normal life might return. But the dancers make that impossible. They do not move together like a trained troupe. They are not one cheerful parade. One person turns in a lane. Another begins pacing near a door. A third is seen moving long after the light has gone. The pattern is broken, which makes it worse. If there were a rule, you could obey it. If there were a villain, you could point to them. Instead, there is only the fear that what has happened to someone else may happen to you while you are carrying bread home. At first, you keep your distance. Everyone does. Then the stories get closer. One municipal record preserves the distress of a day laborer returning from the harvest. He finds his wife, Apollonia, jumping inside their home. He asks whether she is ill. He tries to calm her. For a moment, she stops. Then people arrive with a bagpipe. Imagine hearing that story from the house next door. Imagine wondering whether a tune, a crowd, or even a fearful thought could pull someone you love back into the street. That is the cruelty of the story from inside the city. The woman in the record is not a symbol. The laborer is not a character in a ghost tale. They have a room to return to. Work waiting in the morning. Neighbors who know their names. And every person who hears what happened to Apollonia has to decide how close to stand when someone begins to move strangely. Do you hold their arm? Do you call for help? Do you keep your own children inside? Or do you back away, hoping distance will make you safe? No surviving record can give you every answer. It cannot tell you the exact rhythm of the bagpipe or the words spoken in that house, but it preserves enough to make the danger real. A family confronted with a body they could not command, and a street ready to turn private distress into public terror. By evening, you find yourself looking at every open door differently. You wonder what is happening behind it. You wonder how many people are listening, just as you are, for the first scrape of shoes. Soon, the problem is no longer private. It is in the council chamber. It is in the market. It is in every conversation that ends when a stranger walks past. On July 23rd, the magistrates have to decide what to do with families whose children or relatives are caught up in the dance. Some families are told to keep affected children at home, or help pay for their care if they can. Guild brotherhoods help their own members. 3 carts are prepared for people to be taken toward a chapel of Saint Vitus near Saverne. You watch the wheels leave the city and try to believe that distance can cure what has entered your neighborhood. The carts do not carry an answer with them. They carry people away from the lanes where everyone is watching. For the families left behind, that can feel like mercy and abandonment at the same time. You see a hand lifted from a cart. You see another hand rise from the crowd. Neither reaches the other. Then the road bends toward the hills, and the city gate closes around the people who remain. At home, the smallest decisions take on weight. You choose the street with fewer people. You keep your children near the wall when you pass the market. You listen when a neighbor says someone has started moving again, even when you do not want to listen.
Saint Vitus matters to you because people say he can punish the impious with a dancing curse.
If that is true, prayer might help. If it is not true, then something even worse is happening. A danger with no face, no wound, and no remedy you understand. The city physicians offer an answer. They do not call it possession. They do not call it an infection. They speak of a natural illness, of summer heat, the stars, and blood made too hot. It is an explanation that gives the council something to do. But explanations are not cures. By August 2nd, public dancing and the drums that gather crowds are banned. The order is strange. How do you ban a dance from people who say they cannot stop? Still, the music goes quiet. Doors close. The band changes the sound of Strasbourg before it changes anything else. Drums are set aside. A piper thinks twice before lifting an instrument. A square that once carried trade, gossip, and noise opens into a tense, empty space. But silence is not relief when you are waiting for a body to begin moving. You learn to read the faces of people passing your door. Are they hurrying because they are late for work? Are they unsteady because the stones are uneven? Or are they about to become another person everyone watches from a safe distance? The order can forbid a public gathering. It cannot forbid dread from gathering inside a household. It cannot make a worried parent sleep. The city tries to break the rhythm before the rhythm can take anyone else. And this is where the story becomes more frightening. Not because the records tell us everything, but because they do not. Later chronicles will claim that 200, even 400 people were swept into the crisis. Those figures are possible, but not secure. The popular tale says people danced themselves to death, sometimes at a rate of 15 a day. But Strasbourg's surviving civic records do not give us a reliable death toll. They do not let us count bodies with confidence. So do not picture a neat row of numbers. Picture what an ordinary person can actually know. An exhausted neighbor who has not come home. A mother keeping her child behind a locked door. A crowd that parts when someone begins to jerk and turn. A city council writing orders because it has no better answer. That is enough to make you afraid. By the end of the summer, the outbreak begins to fade. There is no final confession. No physician discovers a single cause. No document gives you a clean ending. The streets become ordinary again, slowly enough that you might not trust the silence.
Even after the crisis begins to ebb, you do not return to the old city at once.
The market is still there. The same roofs catch the morning light. The same church towers cast their long shadows. But familiar places have become evidence. That corner is where you heard the rumor. That doorway is where a neighbor watched someone pass. That road is where the carts disappeared. You carry the summer forward in small habits, listening too carefully, walking around a crowd, looking down at your own feet when you are tired. No official ceremony can erase that. No final page in a ledger can tell you when the city became safe again. 500 years later, people will still ask what happened to Strasbourg. Some will blame ergot, a fungus that can grow on rye and make people terribly ill. But ergot does not neatly explain why this particular pattern spread to a community for weeks. Others will point to famine, disease, fear, religious belief, and the pressure of living in a city already stretched thin. One leading modern interpretation is a collective psychological crisis, extreme stress expressed through real, involuntary bodily symptoms, shaped by what a community expected danger to look like. That is not the same as pretending. It is not a verdict on the people of Strasbourg, and it is not a solution we can prove. Maybe that is why this story survives. Not because an entire city literally went insane in a day. It did not. The crisis lasted weeks, and the people inside it were not a spectacle. They were neighbors, workers, parents, and children trying to live through something their world could not explain. You wake again before dawn. For a moment you listen for shoes against the cobblestones. Then you remember the woman whose name the records never saved. You remember the carts rolling out of Strasbourg. You remember that a body can carry fear in ways the mind cannot name. And you understand the true horror of that summer. No one knew why the dancing began. No one knew who would move next. And no one could be sure that, if the rhythm found you, you would be able to stop.